Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. You are a man. Hold on. I tell myself those words as I stare through the windshield, wipers scraping across the glass, failing to hold back the deluge of rain. Gray sheets whip against the hood in relentless waves, and somewhere in the distance, thunder shakes the sky. The roads are slick, shining under the pallid glow of streetlights, and each time my tires slosh through a puddle, I feel a shiver along my spine. It's the kind of night that soaks into your bones, cold and unyielding. It's also the night I remember the most vividly. The night I found out who I really was, or wasn't. I've been married to Sarah for 23 years. We have no children, which, for a time, seemed like a mutual decision. Yet I can't help wondering if that decision was more hers than mine. We live, or lived, I should say, in a quiet suburb outside Dallas, not far from where I work. I'm a newly minted police officer, a late career change I made for reasons most men wouldn't guess. At 46, you don't just wake up one day and decide to join the force because you crave excitement. No, my reasons are far more personal. This story really begins in a hotel room, though. A quiet getaway to rekindle the spark, or so Sarah claimed. She picked some place off the beaten path, a cozy inn with pastel walls, and a wraparound porch. She said we needed to reconnect. And I, ever the trusting husband, agreed. We flew out there amid tense, polite smiles, like we both knew something was off, but had neither the courage nor the readiness to address it. It was raining then, too. Funny how I remember that. A soft drizzle, pattering on the windowsill. The hush of it mingled with my subdued anticipation. That hush got louder, somehow, when I discovered a slim silver bracelet lying half-hidden in her luggage. I'd never seen it before. My initial thought was that she planned a surprise for me. Something sweet, even romantic, especially after all our years together. But it wasn't meant for me. No, engraved in tiny letters was, "For her." And beneath those words, hardly visible, but once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore, was a name. A man's name. In that moment, every piece of my identity began to slip. You know the feeling. Your chest hollows out, like there's a vacuum where your heart should be. The air around me suddenly felt too thick. The walls too close. 1,000 questions swarmed my mind. Why? When? Who is he? But I didn't confront her then. That's not my style. I let the moment simmer, my fury condensing into something colder, sharper. I used to think I was a calm man, the kind who solved problems with reason and conversation. Well, that man might still exist, but he was overshadowed by another presence the moment I saw that bracelet. It was a presence that watched Sarah differently, listened to her differently, sized her up as though she were a suspect in a case. Once we returned home, I did what any methodical, meticulous man might do when he suspects the woman he loves is cheating. I dug. 3 days after we were back in Dallas, I discovered more. In her closet, buried under old letters, was a slip of paper from a genetics lab. The top read, DNA paternity analysis. I stared at the heading, unblinking. Why would Sarah need that? We never had children. Yet there it was, the lab's name shining on the paper, corners torn, as if it had been hastily stuffed out of sight. My mind raced. Did she have a child I didn't know about? Or was this for someone else's child, maybe a friend? A million possibilities floated in front of my eyes like confetti, but I could sense the truth, lurking in the edges. We had no kids, so who was tested, and why was it in her closet? I kept breathing, in and out, controlling the adrenaline. My father used to tell me that losing your temper is a sign of losing control, and a man who loses control might, as well, lose everything. So I exhaled through my teeth, refolded the paper, and placed it back exactly as I found it. There's a certain clarity that comes with betrayal, if you can keep your head. I joined the police academy not long after. Sarah was confused, a little startled. She asked, You've worked in security consulting for years. Why the sudden change? I gave her a simple explanation. I wanted something more fulfilling, something with a sense of civic duty. She nodded, forced a supportive smile, but I could see the suspicion in her eyes. A shadow crossed her face, like she was silently updating her private calculations. I stayed distant, letting her believe that I was just midlife crisis material, searching for purpose. Meanwhile, I used every resource at my disposal to confirm what she had done. I wasn't even sure what I expected to find. Affairs are rarely tidy. But I never imagined she'd be so blatant, so reckless. I did it systematically. I checked her phone records, her emails, social media accounts. The story pieced itself together. A name kept appearing, and it was the same name I'd seen on that bracelet. Marcus Bennett, a financial consultant downtown. Unmarried, mid-30s, obviously wealthy from the handful of pictures I managed to pull up. The man had a taste for expensive suits, vacations in Cabo, and apparently, for married women. One married woman in particular. The shock wore off quickly, replaced by that same cold emptiness. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't smash furniture. All that existed was a pivot in my mind. She's not the woman I thought she was. Shifted to, I'm not the man I thought I was. Because I realized that everything I believed in, my marriage, my sense of stability, was built on a flimsy scaffolding of lies. I used to see myself as a husband, loyal and faithful. I felt like an outsider, a detective assigned to watch two criminals conduct their illicit business. So I moved forward as if on a case. I created a fake social media account, one that would appeal to Sarah's tastes. I studied her interests, the kind of men she favored on her friend lists, the subtle signals in her posts. My aim was to see if she'd bite, if she'd talk to a stranger, flirt, maybe cross more lines. It wasn't about seducing her for pleasure. It was about knowledge, about control. She responded within hours, polite at first, a little flattered. Then, over the next week, the messages got bolder. She was confiding in me, this imaginary man, about her dissatisfactions, about how Dan didn't understand her, how their marriage felt stale, how she needed excitement. I read these words from her in real time. At my desk, my pulse steady, though my soul was screaming. I arranged a rendezvous for her at a cafe downtown, texting her from this fake account. She showed up, wearing a scarf I'd bought her last Christmas, and when no handsome stranger appeared, she looked anxious, scanning the crowd. Later that night, she wrote me a lengthy apology for missing me, for maybe mixing up the date or location. She was contrite yet hopeful we could meet again. She was lying to me about her day, about errands she ran, about a friend she visited. I watched her fidget through dinner, forging plausible excuses about being held up at the store. That was the moment I realized I was done being the fool. And yet, ironically, I couldn't stop reading her messages. Every confession was a knife in my chest. But I needed to know. I needed to see how deep the rot went. She sent a selfie once, tasteful, but undeniably seductive. I recognized the background. The guest bedroom in our house. My eyes flicked to the reflection in the mirror, the bed we never used. But apparently she used it for something else. The real blow, though, came when I discovered how she and Marcus met. It was an accident at first. A chance conversation at a real estate conference, a passing flirtation that quickly sparked into an affair. They'd been meeting at hotels, sometimes in broad daylight. She even let him into our home once when she thought I was away. I found security footage from our door camera, something she forgot we had. It showed him stepping inside, Sarah greeting him with a hungry kiss, right there in the foyer. She'd angled her body so that if anyone watched from the street, it might look innocent. But the camera's vantage point told me all I needed to see. The quick shifting of her hands to his waist, the tilt of her head, their hurried, breathless closeness. Then the door shut, blocking my view of the rest. I won't lie. That footage played in my head day and night, burning itself into my nightmares. I realized they must have done more than just talk. I could feel the pounding of my heart each time I rewatched it, the coldness spreading through my veins. That was the moment I decided I couldn't be a passive victim. Back at the station, I buried myself in training. The rhythmic routine of target practice, the repetition of reading legal codes, the endless physical drills. It grounded me, gave me a sense of order. Meanwhile, Sarah kept up appearances, claiming to be proud of my new role. Yet behind that carefully arranged smile, she was skittish, on edge. She must have sensed a shift in my demeanor. I was quieter, more guarded, and ironically, that made her ask fewer questions. Maybe she thought I was simply stressed from the academy. She had no idea the biggest stress was knowing I was orchestrating her downfall. It was around that time the weather turned dark again. Heavy thunderstorms rolling in almost every evening. I remember standing under the eave of our porch, watching the downpour, and feeling that the sky was staging a perfect reflection of my life. Constant turbulence, unending gloom. Sarah tried one night to approach me. We were in the living room, the faint hum of the AC blending with the splatter of rain on the roof. She hovered near the couch, arms folded defensively, before sitting beside me. "Dan," she started, voice quiet, "are we okay?" I looked at her, the woman who used to be my refuge. I nodded once, forcing calm into my expression. "Long day," I said. She touched my shoulder, and for a split second, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, longing, disgust, and a twisted spark of love. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" I swallowed. "I'm just tired." She hesitated, like she might press further, but then she dropped her hand. "All right." She got up, left the room, and I listened to her footsteps fade upstairs. That was our life now, brittle, delicate, balanced on a razor's edge. In the quiet that followed, I stared at the muted TV. I pictured them together, her laugh, the tilt of her head, the flush on her cheeks. I pictured how she might have kissed him, the same way she once kissed me. That thought stung like acid. I realized I was gripping the arm of the couch so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I unclenched my fingers and forced a steady exhale. Control. Not long after that, I found out she'd booked another hotel, this time with Marcus. She didn't know I was tracing her phone's GPS. The address was a boutique hotel downtown, the kind with fancy cocktails in the lobby and high-thread count sheets in every room. I did something I never thought I'd do in a million years. I followed her. I arrived before she did, parking my car in a narrow side street. Rain hammered the hood, dancing on the pavement. My shirt was damp by the time I slipped into the hotel's dimly lit entrance. I recalled the date, a Tuesday evening, quiet, fewer guests, perfect for a discreet rendezvous. I waited near the bar, nursing a black coffee, scanning every face. Then I saw her step into the lobby. She wore a sleek black trench coat, hair swept up in a neat chignon. I watched from the corner of my eye as she approached the front desk, smiling politely at the clerk. My stomach clenched in a slow, measured wave. When Marcus walked in moments later, my pulse pounded. He shrugged off his wet jacket, revealing a crisp shirt. He had that confident stride, the posture of a man who knows he's about to get what he wants. He spotted Sarah, and the look they exchanged was electric, alive with unspoken passion. I followed them up, discreetly, taking the stairs one floor at a time, ignoring the elevator he and Sarah used. It was a small hotel, so it wasn't hard to guess which room they'd chosen. I waited at a safe distance, near the hallway, listening to footsteps, muffled conversation. Then a door clicked shut. I shouldn't have done it, but I pressed my ear against that door. The blood roared in my ears, drowned by the rush of the storm outside. I heard soft laughter, hushed voices, her voice, his voice. Then the sounds that no husband wants to hear, rustling of clothes, whispered encouragement, faint moans that thickened the air. A wave of nauseating dread swept through me. I clenched my jaw, pinned my shoulders to the wall, forcing myself not to react. My wedding ring felt like an iron band strangling my finger. My breath slowed, becoming shallow. Inside that room, they were crossing a line, and all I could do was listen. The hallway was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the heating vents. I stared at the patterned carpet, counting each swirl and dot as if it could anchor me in reality. I took a slow step back, left the corridor, and made it to the stairwell. My skin felt cold. I didn't know who I was anymore in that moment. A normal man might burst in, break down the door, confront them in a fit of rage. Another man might flee, humiliated. But me, I just took it in, stored it, let it fill me with a quiet, lethal certainty. This woman I loved, the life we built, was gone. Everything was up for grabs now, including my own identity. Exposition was done. Now we develop. I let them have their night. Then, over the following weeks, I started to tighten the noose. Not physically. I had no intention of harming Sarah, or even Marcus. This was psychological warfare, and I had the upper hand. I used my new position in law enforcement to keep track of anything that might be relevant to Marcus. Any shady financial dealings, any sign of tax evasion, insider trading. The man was squeaky clean on paper, so I dug deeper. My search eventually yielded a lead. One of his clients was under federal investigation for fraud. That little detail wasn't enough to destroy him, but it was enough to put him on the radar of people who could. Meanwhile, I continued my fake online persona, weaving a spell that Sarah was all too willing to believe. Her messages grew more intimate, more frantic, almost. She described feeling trapped, confused, and strangely guilty. I could see the cracks forming in her carefully curated existence. She was juggling me, the real me, her lawful husband, and me, the phantom lover she thought existed online. And of course, Marcus, the living, breathing affair partner. She was playing a dangerous game, and I was the house, stacking the odds in my favor. On the surface, I remained the dutiful husband. I came home, did the chores, made minimal conversation. I listened to her excuses about being late, about meeting clients after hours, about going to see friends from out of town. Always calm, always composed. And it ate at her, because she sensed something was off. She questioned me late at night, her eyes searching mine in the dim glow of our bedroom lamp. I gave her nothing but vaguely reassuring answers. The tension built, until the quarrel. It happened on a Sunday morning, in our kitchen. Rain hammered the windows yet again, turning the yard into a muddy swamp. Sarah was cleaning up breakfast dishes, quietly lost in thought. I came in, poured myself a second cup of coffee, and looked straight at her for what felt like the first time in months. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was low, detached. She set down a plate, turned slowly. "Sure." I fixed my gaze on her. "Where were you Friday night?" She blinked, confusion mixing with alarm. I had to show a house to a client. Ran late. "Why?" That's when I placed a slip of paper on the counter, a record of that hotel booking. Her name, his name, the date. She glanced at it, her face draining of color. My heart drummed steadily, but my face remained unreadable. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I know." Her lips parted, and for a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock. Then she gasped, eyes brimming with panic. "Dan, let me explain." I shook my head. "Explain what?" "That you're sleeping with Marcus Bennett. That you've been lying to me for who knows how long." She took a step forward, arms outstretched, as if to comfort me. "It's not. Just let me talk." I set down my coffee. "Go ahead." I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "It just happened. I didn't plan it, Dan." I studied her face, the tears forming. "You expect me to believe that?" She exhaled shakily. "We met at a conference. It was harmless at first, just flirting. I wasn't happy. I felt you were distant. My hand sliced the air in a curt gesture. "Stop." She froze, tears shimmering. "You're scaring me. You're so calm." I stared at her, letting her see the coldness in my eyes. "I have nothing else left to feel." She tried to speak again, but I turned away silent. Her voice trembled as she begged me to look at her. The fight was not some explosive screaming match, but a tight, suffocating standoff. Each pause felt like the hush before a punch, each breath a pivot between desperation and condemnation. Eventually, I left the kitchen, coffee untouched. She called my name, but I kept walking, aware that every second of silence was a blow to her illusions. In the past, I might have yelled or demanded an explanation. Now, I simply had no use for her justifications. Climax that week, I gathered everything I had on Marcus. I knew from various data points that the investigation into his client was ramping up. If I presented the right information to the right people, Marcus's career, and possibly his freedom, could be endangered. Meanwhile, Sarah hovered around me, anxious, trying to salvage what remained. She asked if we could talk, go to counseling, or even take another trip to work things out. One night, I found her in the living room, tears streaking her cheeks as she held that damned bracelet in her hands. She looked up when she saw me. "I ended it with him," she said, voice shaking. I swear, I believed her, at least that she told Marcus something along those lines. But it didn't matter, not anymore. I'd discovered more than just an affair. I discovered that the woman I loved was capable of hiding entire chapters of her life from me. I confronted her about the DNA test. She went pale, stammering that it was about a friend who had asked for a favor, or that it was a misunderstanding. The story changed each time she told it. Maybe it was her own test with Marcus, or a pregnancy scare, or something else entirely. She insisted it was nothing, but her eyes were wild with fear. I simply nodded. I didn't raise my voice. I reminded her that I'd joined the force. "I deal with lies every day," I told her flatly. "You're not even good at it." She broke down, sobbing, and I just stood there, arms at my sides, feeling like a stranger watching a random woman cry. I left the house that night, sleeping at a motel just a few blocks from my precinct. Revenge, the final twist, came soon after. I used my resources, legitimate channels through the department, and passed on the tip about Marcus's business dealings. That, combined with his association with a major fraud suspect, escalated quickly. One morning, news broke that Marcus Bennett's office was raided by authorities. I saw the headlines: "Financial consultant under investigation." My phone buzzed nonstop. Sarah texted me repeatedly, left messages. "Dan, please, call me back. This is crazy. Mark says everything is blown out of proportion. We need to talk." I ignored them. I let her panic. In the midst of this, I kept up the facade of that fake account, just enough to stoke her desperation. Only I knew she was the one unraveling, not me. It felt surgical, precise, detached. Eventually, Sarah cornered me at home, her face drawn, dark circles under her eyes. "What are you doing, Dan?" she whispered. "Please tell me you didn't cause all this." I shrugged. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do. God, you do." She sank into a chair, shaking her head. "He's going to lose everything. And I already ended things, but now he's terrified." I said nothing. She stared up at me, tears in her voice. "Say something, damn it. Yell at me, punish me if you need to, but talk to me." I folded my arms. "Sarah, you made your choices. Now you deal with them." The cold finality in my tone was more brutal than any anger. She broke down in gut-wrenching sobs. Once upon a time, I would have rushed to comfort her. Now I watched her like a man watches a distant storm, impassive, knowing it can't touch him anymore. Within the next few weeks, the legal process took its course. Marcus faced serious charges related to his client's financial misdeeds. My role in that chain of events remained invisible, cloaked by proper protocols. Sarah was left standing in the wreckage of her decisions, the illusions she'd carefully built. One evening, she approached me while I was on the porch. Rain hammered the lawn, a classic scene in our story. Always rain. She took a seat beside me, neither of us speaking at first. Then she said, "I don't know you anymore." I nodded slowly. "That's because I don't know myself either." She looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring was still on. "What do we do now?" I let the question hang between us. The tension felt like that moment right before lightning splits the sky. Finally, I turned to her. We let go. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks, mixing with the drops of rain that the wind blew onto the porch. I felt something twist in my gut, an echo of the old me, the one who used to love her without reservation, who would have done anything to keep her safe. But that man was gone. I walked inside, leaving her there in the dim light. The divorce papers would come soon enough. Maybe she'd fight them, maybe not. It didn't matter. That part of my life ended the moment I stood in that hotel hallway, listening to her and Marcus, hearing her betrayal etched into my soul. I once thought I'd be a father, a grandfather, maybe retire in a cozy home with Sarah by my side. Now, I'm a cop, brand new to the force, forging a second life out of the shards of my first. People ask me why I chose this path so late in the game, and I give them a polite smile or a joke about midlife change. They don't need to know the truth, that it was revenge, plain and simple, that guided me into uniform. She doesn't know the full extent of what I did, how I orchestrated Marcus's downfall. Maybe one day she'll figure it out. Or maybe she'll just believe it was rotten luck or cosmic karma for their affair. It doesn't matter. I've let the system carry my vengeance to its conclusion. I stand here, in the quiet of our empty living room, listening to the rain, watching the lights flicker across the wet street through the window. The house used to feel alive with memories. Now it feels like an echo chamber, haunted by a life that no longer exists. You are a man. Hold on. I repeat that to myself. My father's voice. My own. I'm not sure. But I do hold on. Stiffening my spine. Swallowing the regrets. Letting the emptiness keep me steady. Somewhere, deep in my mind, I replay that final image of her on the porch, caught between tears and raindrops, and I feel the faintest stir of sadness. But I don't move toward her, don't speak. Whatever path we shared is gone, washed away by the storms we unleashed. We pay for our lies in different currencies. Sarah will pay in guilt and shame, Marcus in legal repercussions, and I, perhaps, in the loss of whatever innocence I once had. Yet the unexpected thing is, I don't feel relief or triumph. I feel only a quiet vacancy, as if I set out to claim revenge, and ended up empty-handed. The drive that kept me going these last months. It's spent, but I keep telling myself, you are a man, hold on. Because that's all that's left to do. The rains will continue, life will continue, and I'll stand my post, day after day, trying to remember what it was like to trust, or to be whole, or to wake up beside the woman you love without wondering if she's lying to you. The illusions, those are gone. The spark, gone. The ache remains. But even aches can dull with time. Maybe I'll rebuild. Maybe I'll stay broken. Either way, the world doesn't stop for my heartache. I'll bury my bitterness under procedure and routine. I'll patrol the streets, file the paperwork, issue the tickets, act the part of a man at peace. I've become an actor, a man who walks the city at night, letting the drizzle of rain hide the look in his eyes. Perhaps that's the new me. Calm, composed, surgically precise in dealing with those who cross me. It's worse than anger, Sarah said. She was right. Because anger burns out. This cold detachment is permanent, or at least it feels that way. In the end, we each carry our own burdens. And even though I stand in uniform, upholding the law, I know that real justice, the kind that sets your soul straight, might not exist. We just do what we can, with what we have, until we can't anymore. I look at the front door, remembering that security footage of Marcus stepping inside. I look at the reflection in the window, seeing the man I was. the man I am, and the man I might become. It's all the same person, but the lines are blurred. I close my eyes, letting the sound of the storm wash over me once more, and wait for the dawn to come, as it always does. Then I open them, exhale, and whisper, "You are a man. Hold on." The rain keeps falling, and that's how this ends.